In the late 50s and early 60s, drag racing was all the rage. What had started as just gearheads lining up on the back road quickly escalated into a professional sport and became a part of pop culture.
More than 40,000. There is no doubt that drag racing is one of America's fastest growing sports.
And at the very top was super stock drag racing. The common understanding among the big three was that what wins on Sunday sells on Monday, and that was proven to be true. Horsepower war had broke out in America, and the battlefield was the drag strip. And like any war, it had its casualties. In 1963, GM decided to quit racing indefinitely, which left Chrysler and Ford in a head-to-head to make the fastest cars on the drag strip. And at this point in time, Ford was starting to lag behind. Chrysler released their Max Wedge engine in 1962 and put it in some of the lightest cars that Dodge and Plymouth had to offer. Ford was using the Galaxy with a 427 engine for their drag cars, but it was simply too heavy to keep up. Ford needed to make some changes if they planned to keep competing with Chrysler. So in 1964, they turned their attention from the Galaxy to the Galaxy's skinnier sister, the Fairlane.
With cars, as with women, too much weight in the wrong place can create problems.
And it was with that, the Fairlane Thunderbolt began development. Ford took the Fairlane over to a local custom shop in Michigan called Dearborn Steel Tubing and had them get to work on turning this little economy car into a super stock drag racing machine. And the first order of business was weight reduction. They replaced the metal hood, fenders, and doors with fiberglass and fabricated aluminum bumpers to replace the stock heavy ones. Ford replaced the stock Fairlane seats because they realized that the Ford Econoline van seats they had laying around were actually lighter. All the glass was then scrapped in favor of plexiglass, and Ford deleted everything that wasn't absolutely necessary for a drag car. Sun visors, armrest, carpet, insulation, rear window cranks, the jack, and much more were all removed for weight reduction. You couldn't even get this car with a heater or a radio, and no fancy wheels either. Steelies were the lightest wheel Ford offered, so those were the wheels they used. And after it was all said and done, the Thunderbolt ended up weighing around 700 pounds lighter than the Galaxies. But that wasn't the hard part. The engine bay for the Fairlane had to be majorly modified to squeeze the 427 in. And even after all that, they still needed to move the battery to the trunk and add a massive hood scoop for more engine clearance. Ford then removed the high beams and instead installed screens and ductwork to help feed air up into the dual Holley 4-barrels. This probably sounds familiar to those of you that have seen the video on my dad's Galaxy, because he did something similar on his car. If you want to check that out, the link will be in the description. The 427 had several other performance modifications too, most notable being a forged crankshaft and high riser heads, which landed this motor at a 12 to 7 to 1 compression ratio. Now Ford officially said these motors made 425 horsepower, but they were underselling them because people have dynoed them and the real number is around 600. Now you're probably thinking, alright, that's all really cool, but how fast is it? And I can tell you that in November of 1963, this car ran an 1161 at 122 miles an hour using the tires of the era, which was extremely fast for the time. Fast enough for Ford to win the 1964 NHRA Winter Nationals Championship. What made these cars special is that anyone could walk into a dealership and buy one, as opposed to the Chrysler Hemi cars of the time, which were illegal in some states and the average guy couldn't really get his hands on them. As a matter of fact, Ford only needed to build 50 cars to qualify for the NHRA, but ended up building 100 of them just to sell. Now an 11-second car in 1964 would have been a huge deal, but how does it compare to the cars of today? A 2022 Camaro ZL1, which has 650 horsepower, can do the quarter mile in 11.7. And the 2021 Hellcat SRT, according to Car and Driver, can do the quarter mile in 11.8. Now that's not to say that the Thunderbolt would beat these cars every single time. After all, we are just looking at numbers on paper, and with real racing, a lot of other factors come into play. However, it's just really cool to see that a car from 1964 could theoretically still compete with the cars of late. And on top of that, I've heard that guys today have been able to get these Thunderbolts into the 10s just using modern tires. As you can see, the Thunderbolts were an incredible car back when they came out, and they can still hold their own today. And that's just one of the reasons why I find this car so fascinating, and hopefully you guys could find it interesting too. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you guys found it entertaining. Be sure to leave a comment and like this video, And if I got anything wrong, be sure to let me know down in the comments. See you guys next time.